I would like to invite Dr. Jigna Desai, Head of Center for Heritage Conservation, Ahmedabad, to introduce what we are doing in Dharmaj currently under the Dharmaj Heritage Collaborative.
Thank you, Ashna. I won't take much of the time from everyone because I think there's a lot to hear from people who belong in Dharmaj and about and from people who've done a lot of research in Dharmaj. So I will just I think most of the people je loko ahiya chhe, I think there are also a few members from Dharmaj who are there in the library Ashnani Sathe, and there are people who have joined here with us on Zoom, and then there are people on YouTube. Very briefly, we have this initiative called Dharmaj Heritage Collaborative, which we are doing with Avichal Foundation. The intention is to study and then eventually impact heritage conservation of Dharmaj at the ground level in a way that it is collaborative with the people who belong to Dharmaj and whose heritage this is. So we strongly believe that our activities should not be such that we kind of come in, we give our expertise and we move out, because heritage at the end of the day is best preserved by the people whom it belongs to. So we are there as your fellows in your journey, in the journey of people whose heritage this is. So that's the initiative. We have so far initiated 2 site schools. One is with Mitaben and Avni and Kalidas House, and Mitaben and Avni will talk about their journeys as well. Alpita, of course, today is going to talk about her journey. We have just initiated another site school for Mukhi House. And site school basically is that we work together with the owners and the custodians of the house to conserve that site, along with introducing various educational initiatives. Mukhi House custodians, we are hoping that they are with Ashna there in the library, but if not, they'll join us. We have been doing various research initiatives. We've had one studio last semester where our students have worked on mapping the heritage assets of Dharmaj and working on possibilities of settlement regeneration. This semester, we have students who are engaging in deep research of certain specific topics on sites of Dharmaj. So this seminar is very important for us because most of the people who are working, most of the students who are working on Dharmaj will get various insights from different groups of people, and they will in turn be able to contribute to the heritage of Dharmaj. So I think that is where I will stop, and over to you, Ashna. And yes, before I hand it over, I sincerely thank Alice, Ratna, Alpita, of course, was part of our team, Avaniben and Mitaben to join us here and who will be sharing their journeys with us as well. Yeah, over to you, Ashna.
Thank you. So without further delay, I'll start with my presentation. So today I'm just going to give a brief overview on the architectural heritage of Dharmaj. Dharmaj is a small village in the Anand district of Gujarat, which enjoys global recognition due to its highly ambitious and enterprising communities that have settled across the globe over the past many years. Dharmaj ne આજે આપણે ગ્લોબલ વિલેજ તરીકે જાણીએ છીએ. ચરોતરમાં ખાલી ચરોતરમાં જ નહીં પણ આખા ગુજરાતમાં ગ્લોબલ વિલેજ તરીકે જણાય છે. એ કેમ છે? કારણ કે અહીંયાથી બહુ બધા લોકો વિદેશમાં સેટલ થયેલા છે, વિદેશમાં ગયા છે ને એ બધું, એટલે એ વસ્તુને લીધે ધર્મજને બધા જાણે છે. આના સિવાય પણ અપાર્ટ ફ્રોમ ધીસ there are there is a lot of architectural wealth જેને આપણે સાંસ્કૃતિક વારસો કહીએ ને મકાનોના રૂપમાં કે પછી અહીંયાની પદ્ધતિઓના રૂપમાં કામ કરવાની પદ્ધતિઓના રૂપમાં એ બધી વસ્તુમાં અહીંયા આગળ એ રીતે ખાસું એવું જાળવવા લાયક વસ્તુઓ છે. So, even when you walk through the streets of Dharmaj, you will actually find it lined with ornate doorways that lead to the khadkis, and on the way also you find a lot of impressive structures with very minute or intricate wooden carving. કોતરણી કામ છે વુડનું ને બધું બહુ જ સરસ જોવા મળે છે અહીંયા. So for those who are not familiar with the context of Dharmaj, Dharmaj lies in the central Gujarat region, and it was part of so the Kheda district was earlier known as Kaira district, and until the 1997. After that, it split into two, so Kheda and Anand. So Anand was carved out out of this Kaira district, and that is what forms most of this thing that you see in green. आज ग्रीन लाइन છે ને એ that is the ચરોતર region, જે ચરોતર પ્રદેશ જેને કહીએ છે, that is there.
You need to change the slide, sorry.
Yeah, Ashna, the slide is not changing on the Zoom. It may be changing on your this thing. So
I'm so sorry.
Maybe if you do full share and then as in slide share mode and then change.
Change now?
Yeah.
So I'll keep it this way if it's fine.
Yeah.
So એટલે આ ખેડા જિલ્લા ને આણંદ જિલ્લોમાંનો પાર્ટ, એટલે ચરોતર રીજન કહીએ તો આણંદ આખું આવે એમાં અને ખેડાનો અમુક પાર્ટ આવે છે. So it has all of Anand and part of Kheda, and it has these various villages out of which we call the Chhagam. You have Vaso, you have Sojitra, you have Dharmaj, Karamsad, Bhadran, and of course Petlad. So that sort of forms the Charotar region, and this is what it looks like, in terms of the scale. So if you look at Anand, it's much more spread out, and Petlad a little less, and Dharmaj is actually a very small village geographically, if you see area-wise. Dharmaj was also very close to the sea route at that time. જે દરિયાઈ માર્ગ હતો ને પેલું વેપાર કરવાનો ને એ બધું એની સાથે ધર્મજ ખંભાત જેને આજે આપણે કહીએ છીએ એ ટાઈમે it was known as Cambay, and it was a very important center for the import of timber and other goods and the export of cash crops. So I think that was a very important center which also added to the prosperity of Dharmaj over the years. So this is just a glimpse of how the settlement of Dharmaj. It has vast agricultural fields. આજુબાજુ બધે આપણને ખેતરો જોવા મળે છે, અને બહુ જ એટલે દરેક ગામ ચરોતર રીજનના દરેક ગામમાં એવું જ છે કે ગામડું વચ્ચે છે ને આજુબાજુ ખેતર છે, ગામડાની આજુબાજુ તરત ખેતર હોય છે. So that again is another unique feature about the villages of the Charotar region. In the history of Dharmaj, we often come across this connection between the Baroda state and the Charotar region. So Dharmaj was part of the erstwhile Baroda state, and because of this, it has also benefited from many progressive educational and social reforms introduced by the Gaikwad rulers of the time. Dharmaj was also it was also made to be a center of education, because under the library movement and other initiatives also brought about these very important educational institutions in the village. So for example, you have this library where we are sitting in just now. It was part of this series of progressive movements introduced, which eventually had its impacts in the village of Dharmaj. So the library આપણે જ્યાં અત્યારે બેઠા છીએ એ પણ એક બહુ જ હિસ્ટોરિક ટાઈમનો ભાગ હતી, જે લાઇબ્રેરી મુવમેન્ટની અંડર established thi. Then we have the VN High School, which was also established during the 1940s. And of course, we also had the railway station. The other part of the history, other aspect of the history of Dharmaj is transnational migration. So as I was saying earlier, Dharmaj has a history of migration since the 19th century, and people have been going abroad, settling there for various reasons, for higher education, for business, and lots of other, or also, maybe mainly also for to explore something new, explore a new place, learn more about it, and so on. So this also has brought a lot of influences, external influences, which we can very clearly see in the architecture of Dharmaj. So this is another aspect. The third aspect is the settlement form and the character that emerges out of a typical unit, living unit of the region, which is very typical of the region. So if you look at any settlement, either rural or a historic urban settlement in central Gujarat, in northern Gujarat, અહીંયા આજુબાજુના ગામોમાં પણ આપણે જોઈએ તો અહીંયાની જે રહેવાની જે મકાનોની ગોઠવણી જે રીતે હોય છે એ આ રીતની જ હોય છે કે ખડકી હોય. There is a gate and you enter through it, and the buildings are arranged in sort of the formation that the buildings make. They give an open space in between, and it's closed from all ends. So it's almost like a fort-like formation that's there. It's entered through a gate. So these are two khadkis which are important, historically important in Dharmaj. One is the Athamni khadki, and the other is the Vachli khadki. And these are schematic drawings, schematic plans made by one of our students. And this is the map which so the khadki basically grows organically, and the khadkis keep coming on as the ancestor, as the family lineage, the family expands. What was typical, I'm sure all of you are aware of that, that it was very typical for members of the same family or members having the same ancestral history living in the same sort of khadki. So yeah, and currently these are the building types. If you look at the building types, you will see that most of the buildings in Dharmaj are residential. જે ગામમાં જે બી બધા બિલ્ડિંગ્સ છે મોસ્ટલી બધા ઘરો જ છે, બરાબર. અને ઇન્સ્ટિટ્યુશન્સ છે, લાઇબ્રેરી છે, સ્કૂલ છે, રિલિજિયસ ઇન્સ્ટિટ્યુશન્સ છે, મંદિરો છે. એ સિવાયના જેટલા બી આપણે જોઈએ છે મેઇનલી બધા ઘરો જોવા મળે છે ધર્મજમાં. અને આ બધા ઘરોમાં જ આ બધા ઇન્ફ્લુએન્સીસ જે અલગ અલગ ટાઈમના છે, કે અંગ્રેજી સરકારના ટાઈમના હતા, કે ગાયકવાડના ટાઈમમાં હતા, કે પછી એવા ટાઈમમાં કે જે બહાર જઈને રહેલા લોકો હોય એ લોકો રહીને પાછા આવ્યા હોય ત્યાંથી, એ લોકો કંઈક બીજું કોન્ટ્રીબ્યુશન લાવ્યા હોય, એ બધા ઇન્ફ્લુએન્સીસ આપણે જોઈએ છે ધર્મજના મકાનોમાં. So these are the building types have been mapped by our students who have worked on the urban regeneration strategies for Dharmaj last semester. This is another mapping that has been done, and this is the mapping of cultural heritage assets. So out of all these buildings, the students had actually identified buildings which were historically important. Students જ્યારે ફરતા હતા ધર્મજમાં, ઓગસ્ટથી કામ ચાલુ કર્યું હતું સ્ટુડન્ટ્સે અહીંયા આગળ, અને એ લોકોએ આઈડેન્ટિફાય કર્યા અમુક બિલ્ડિંગ જે હિસ્ટોરિકલી ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ છે, જેનું ઐતિહાસિક મહત્વ બહુ છે, અને આપણા ધર્મજના વારસા માટે એની જાળવણી ખૂબ જ મહત્વની છે. So these are the cultural heritage assets that they had marked. They are pretty spread out throughout the village. More details on each of these assets is still work in progress. Some of the students are still studying this in detail right now. Another very important building typology or construction typology that we see here is the traditional timber construction. Now these are typically half timbered houses where the structure is in timber and the rest of the house is in brickwork. So the frame is in timber and the enclosure is in brick. So one of our students had actually mapped the core of the village for these timber structures and found out that there are almost close to 130 timber structures within this core which has been marked. And again, that student is continuing working on these timber structures, understanding the structural system, understanding what are the causes of its decay, and so on. These are some photographs of structures that we have here. So the degree of ornamentation varies, the degree of elaborate wooden carving varies with each house. So if you see here, the structure is very simple. You only have the ornamented wooden carved brackets below, and the floor on top is pretty simple. Here you have a certain level of ornamentation. Here it's in Mukhidelu, we see the ornamentation very, very intricate, very elaborate, and the wood is also painted. Then we have colonial influences, buildings that emerged out of the colonial era, where it's we can categorize buildings in terms of their styles, but we would like to put it all out there, as under the umbrella of colonial influences. So you have the Akhada building here. You have Aurobindo Bhuvan, which is sort of a mix of a neoclassical style and Art Deco style. You have Manchester Wala House, which is again a very neoclassical style building. Apart from that, we have Art Deco. So Art Deco, we see a huge influence of Art Deco in Dharmaj. We see a lot of buildings. In fact, the students who are mapping Art Deco structures in Dharmaj currently have so far found out about 118 buildings which are in Art Deco style. Now, some of them are completely, in the Art Deco style, as in they follow the kind of elements that qualify as Art Deco. Even the interiors are in Art Deco style, and some of them use only certain elements, external elements, to just imitate that style. So again, research is still going on these Art Deco buildings also. એટલે આજે આર્ટ ડેકો સ્ટાઇલના બિલ્ડિંગ્સ છે એના પર બે સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ અત્યારે રિસર્ચ કરી રહ્યા છે, અને આ વિલેજમાં એટલે અંદર કોરમાં ગામમાં 118 આ સ્ટાઇલના બિલ્ડિંગ્સ અત્યારે જોવા મળ્યા છે. એટલે એના પર ફર્ધર રિસર્ચ થયું છે, કોણે બનાવ્યું, કેવી રીતે આ સ્ટાઇલ ધર્મજ સુધી આવી, and so on. Now, I would like to move on talking about the present state of architectural heritage in Dharmaj. I would not like to present a completely, sort of a negative picture that, things are not being taken care of and so on. Dharmajમાં વારસા તરફ અને સાંસ્કૃતિક વારસા તરફની awareness છે, ઘણી છે. So it's not that people over here are not aware about the architectural wealth that they have. They are very much aware about it, but there are certain reasons that have led the architectural heritage of Dharmaj to a different state. So we see these two opposites. We see these very well-maintained houses, nicely repaired, nicely preserved, those kind of houses. And at the same time, we also see this where buildings have been demolished and these open spaces, they just remain. People don't know what to do with these, or either there's some property dispute going on and so on. So this is sort of the other side of the coin. Apart from that, so when the students were working here last semester, they found out they've identified a few reasons which has led the architecture of Dharmaj to become in a certain way. So one is inappropriate additions and modifications. Over the years, as in when people living in Dharmaj aspire for modern amenities, modern facilities in their houses, ચલો ઘરની અંદર પહેલાના જમાનામાં ઘરની અંદર ટોયલેટ નતા હોતા, એટલે બહાર કન્સ્ટ્રક્ટ કરવાની જરૂર પડે. બીજું કે પહેલા ઘરો નેચરલી ઠંડા રહેતા હતા, હવે બહારથી આપણને એસી લગાવવાની જરૂર પડી રહી છે. તો એ બધી જરૂરિયાતની વસ્તુઓ જ છે. સો ધીઝ આર everyday needs which like I think like you and me also have. So I think this but how it's done, how these things are, how these services are added into the old houses or the traditional houses, that is what makes or breaks the situation. So you see these certain additions done which sort of put a pressure on the older elements of the house. So for example, if you see RCC and wood together, here it's fairly it's a little away from it, but in certain cases you also see it pushing the wood timber members up, or either exerting more pressure on the structure and so on. The other reason is lack of maintenance and active use, which ultimately may lead to abandonment. So this, we see a lot of structures which are abandoned also in Dharmaj, mostly due to neglect, lack of funds in maintaining, or either the owners have settled abroad. લોકો અહીંયા NRI અહીંયા વર્ષમાં 1-2 વાર આવતા હોય, એ લોકોને મેન્ટેન કરવાનો ટાઈમ પણ ના મળતો હોય અને ધ્યાન પણ ના રહેતું હોય. એવું કરીને ઘણા બધા મકાનો આ સ્થિતિમાં પહોંચ્યા છે. જેમ કે આ પણ એક આપણું ટ્રેડિશનલ વુડન બિલ્ડિંગ જ છે, ટિમ્બરનું બિલ્ડિંગ જ છે, પણ એને મેન્ટેન નથી કર્યું કે પછી એને સ્ટોરેજ માટે યુઝ થાય છે. So different inappropriate uses and or a lack of an active use would lead to their abandonment. The third is replacement of the old with the new. This is also very common in Dharmaj. You see some of the streets which are totally transformed. I mean, one can now imagine, if we see photos of old buildings or old photographs of Dharmaj, one may be able to conjecture an image of this street, how it would be versus how it is now. You look at these streets. So some of the streets are fully occupied by these, or have been replaced by RCC buildings. This is an example that is very recent. So this was a photograph which was taken in February 2020, I think sometime around that, by Dr. Jigna Desai. And this is a photograph that was taken few days ago. You can actually see the traditional construction getting replaced or disappearing from the streets. So if you look at this street, you see this structure here, which was a timber structure. And then you see Mangal Bhuvan, which was further off. Now, if you take a photo of this street, you see this new construction happening here, and Mangal Bhuvan is no more there, as we all are aware. So the streets are very rapidly changing. In a span of 2 years, this has happened. So what we are doing in order to contribute to the awareness of this about this architectural heritage, SEP University through and CHC through and Avichal Heritage Foundation through, અમારી કોશિશ એ જ રહી છે કે આ બધો જે વારસો છે એનું થોડુંક આપણે રેકોર્ડ્સ ક્રિએટ કરીએ, કેટલા મકાનો છે, કઈ હાલતમાં છે, અને એને કેવી રીતે આપણે જાળવી શકીએ છે, અને કેવી રીતે યુઝમાં ના હોય તો યુઝમાં કેવી રીતે લાવી શકાય છે, એ બધુંનું રિસર્ચ અત્યારે અમારા સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ કરી રહ્યા છે. તો એના અંડર ગયા સેમેસ્ટરમાં ઓગસ્ટથી નવેમ્બર સુધી લઈને ઓગસ્ટથી ડિસેમ્બર સુધી આટલું કામ પ્રોડ્યુસ થયું છે. એટલે ફાઉન્ડેશન સ્ટુડિયોના જે સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ છે એ લોકોએ ફોટોગ્રાફ્સથી અને માપણી કરીને આ બધા મકાનોનું રેકોર્ડ્સ ક્રિએટ કર્યા છે, ડ્રોઈંગ બનાવ્યા છે. એક તો આ લાઇબ્રેરીના ડ્રોઈંગ્સ બનાવ્યા છે, બીજા આથમણી ખડકીના ડ્રોઈંગ્સ બનાવ્યા છે, અને ત્રીજા અરબિંદો ભુવનના. એટલે આ 3 બિલ્ડિંગ ડોક્યુમેન્ટ થયા છે, અને આગળ ચાલતા આવા એજ્યુકેશનલ ઇનિશિયેટિવ્સની અંડર વધારે આવા બિલ્ડિંગ્સ ડોક્યુમેન્ટ કરવાની ઈચ્છા અમે લોકો ધરાવીએ છીએ. અંડર ધ અર્બન રિજનરેશન સ્ટુડિયો Under the Urban Regeneration Studio, we've done mapping of the whole. We've mapped, students have mapped Dharmaj. એમાં કયા ઇમ્પોર્ટન્ટ બિલ્ડિંગ્સ છે એ બધું હમણાં જે મેપ્સ તમે જોયા એ બધા એ લોકોએ પ્રોડ્યુસ કર્યા છે. અને એની સાથે સાથે કેવી રીતે આ બિલ્ડિંગના જાળવણી કરી શકાય, કેવી રીતે ધર્મજને રિવાઇવ કરી શકાય, એ બધા આઈડિયાઝ એ લોકોએ પ્રોડ્યુસ કર્યા છે. એની સાથે સાથે એક ડિજિટલ ડોક્યુમેન્ટેશનની વર્કશોપ પણ થઈ હતી, જેમાં માપણી આપણે કરીએ, મેન્યુઅલી કરીએ, હાથેથી કરીએ, પણ હવેની ટેકનોલોજીને જો જોવા જઈએ તો બહુ ડેવલપ થઈ ગઈ છે. વી હેવ methods which allow us to take a series of snapshots across the building and then actually produce a drawing, a visualization, 3D visualization of the building. So atyare we have done that for Kalidas Jethabhai House, along with some street elevations and aerial images of Dharmaj. Apart from that, apart from educational activities, we are also doing site schools, which also incorporate a lot of our educational activities. This is the first site school that we started in Dharmaj. It's the Kalidas Jethabhai House. So a visual assessment was done in sometime around February, and things progressed. In December, we were able to safeguard the structure for the work and for us to be able to do a detailed condition assessment. The second site school that we have is the Mukhi Delu. Anukam, the work for this structure is going to start very soon. Our structure પર બી હવે કામ ચાલુ કરીશું આપણે આ મહિનામાં જ, અને આને પણ આવી રીતે સેફગાર્ડ કરવાનો પ્લાન કર્યું છે. એટલે સેફગાર્ડ એકવાર થઈ જાય, આ સાઇટ સ્કૂલનો કોન્સેપ્ટ એ જ છે કે સાઇટ અમે લોકો અડોપ્ટ કરીએ, થોડો ટાઈમ એના પર કામ કરીએ, સેફગાર્ડ કરીએ, એનું રિપેર, બેસિક જે રિપેર ને બધું હોય એ કરીને ઓનર્સને પાછું આપીએ, અને એને હવે સ્ટ્રક્ચરને કઈ રીતે આગળ યુઝ કરવું છે, કે કઈ રીતે ગામના લોકોને બેનિફિટ થાય એ રીતે યુઝ કરવું છે, એવી રીતે ડિસાઇડ કરીને આપણે પછી એ બિલ્ડિંગની સાચવણી આગળ કરી શકીએ. And these are the topics on which the students are presently working. So we have two courses that are doing work in Dharmaj, under which work in Dharmaj is happening. So one is the Masters in Conservation and Regeneration program, and the other is Masters in Architectural History and Theory. So there are directed research programs which have been undertaken by these students. Each of the students are looking at a very different topic. They are looking at a very different area, and they are adopting appropriate methodologies to take the research further. We also have a bachelor student from Navrashta University, Baroda, who's looking at understanding the transformation of threshold spaces in the residences of Dharmaj. So yeah, this is what we have done so far, and we hope that this collaboration with Avichal Heritage Foundation and the Dharmaj Heritage Collaborative continues to do work in Dharmaj. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashna.
So I would now like to invite Alpita, founder of Avichal Heritage Foundation, to share a few words on what Avichal has been doing in Dharmaj.
Oops. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jigna and Ashna, for the lovely introduction to what we're trying to achieve through the Dharmaj Heritage Collaborative. Welcome to all the people that are present on site at the library, and all those that have joined us through the YouTube channel or through Zoom. So I'm just going to go straight into what Avichal Heritage Foundation is about. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So when I envisioned Avichal Heritage Foundation, it really was a movement that would implement engagement. The idea was to get people like me who were born outside of Dharmaj I'm second generation born in Zimbabwe and had not been to Dharmaj until a few years back. But I see that if I can engage people like me to what our roots offer, we can probably save some of the history that is actually really, really critical to why we ended up where we ended up today, and why there's such a big NRI diaspora of Gujaratis in all corners of the world. And so because within this small little village, which currently inhabits only around 11,000 people, and it truly is a global village. This migration began, like Ashna mentioned, back in the late 1800s, 19th century. And I think a lot of us who have homes in Dharmaj, out of the 130 or 100 or 200 structures that are in Dharmaj that have been identified as heritage at this stage, I'm pretty sure that around 80% are still in the hands of people who are now abroad. And so the more engagement we get from these families, the more we can see some of that heritage retained. So with Avichal Heritage Foundation, what I decided to do was show by example. And so we have an ancestral home, Rhodesia House, which was built by my grandfather in 1932. And it was actually through the brothers, Somabai Muljibai Patel and Narharibai Muljibai Patel. And they had two brothers who lived in Dharmaj, while the other two lived in Zimbabwe and sort of went back and forth. And so this house came about because of the business they created in Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, and therefore the name Rhodesia House. And the first thing we did was restore Rhodesia House. And it took us 2 years, and it's still a work in progress, but now most of it is repaired, and we can actually use it to some extent. And there's still some more renovations going on. But what I wanted to show you was that these old buildings, which had been neglected for almost 40 years, we had a tenant, but we didn't do any major repair works through the years because we couldn't afford to. Now it's a different story. And so we decided to, make the decision between the family. Again, it was a family decision, but not everybody was on board. But one of us had to take the initiative, and so I did. And what you see is the before and after pictures of Rhodesia House, what it was like and what it has become, with a team of conservation contractors. So the people we chose to do this, the expertise is in conservation. So they understand the techniques, they sensitive to old buildings and trying to repair and restore. They also reuse a lot of the materials that they take down. So the way they take it down is such that they can reuse it. So it's really important to get the right contractors to do this for you or with you, so that you can repurpose or reuse a lot of the materials that were originally used in the building. And so here you can see how even new structures were designed exactly, to the old. So it still maintains the old style. So while we added new facilities that we need for today's comforts, we still were very sensitive to the style, to maintain the style of the old house. And so that's the first step. And the next step is to repurpose them. So adaptive reuse. What we did was we took the gatehouse and we converted it into a cafe. It's called Kumusha Cafe, which was opened in August of 2020. And we've had many people come through from abroad and local. And it's been a really great experience to just see how this space, which was closed, this specific space was closed for over 20 years. And I remember when we went in, it was full of cobwebs and cracked walls and, all kinds of things. And today it's really a meeting place for so many people, and it's a fun space. So you can change a space and make it vibrant and current. And so this is just an example of that. We also now use Rhodesia House. We've had an exhibition, and part of the foundation or the vision of reusing this house or repurposing was so that it would benefit the local families. So one of the things we did was we held an exhibition, the Dharmaj pop-up in November of 2021, where we supported some local women businesses as well, to showcase their materials, right? So the idea is this space is not there to make money for itself, but to whatever revenue comes in gets used to maintain the place itself. And through that, we also using it for educational purpose, supporting local businesses, we creating jobs, in the cafe, and just the house alone with the security, the cleaning, we providing new jobs. So that is the purpose of restoring this home. We've had seminars, we've had film shoots. So in terms of adaptive reuse, there's so many ways you can generate revenue so that it's enough. The idea is to get enough revenue to maintain the place. It's not that we as homeowners take anything home. We never did. And I think for us, it's more of a charitable endeavor. And so this is the way we want to showcase that we can do the same. And if there's more homes like this, we could possibly, really create Dharmaj as a cultural tourist destination. And so this was one of the purposes that we wanted to create through Avijal and sensitize people. The other thing we did was tracing roots. We did, what it helped me do, at least, is really go back and discover my family roots. And I connected with the extended family, my cousins, older cousins. I found out about my grandfather's history through this tracing route, or just when we discovered all the old pictures and started sort of seeing where everybody is and where they ended up. And so one of the initiatives we did was we started this Tracing Roots exhibit in 2020 with Dharmaj Day. At the same time around Dharmaj Day, the idea was to extend the Dharmaj Day experience to bring people into the village and actually get a sense of what Dharmaj was about. And we had an exhibit where we traced where the people from Dharmaj went. And so we had an art exhibit as well, which went through the channels through which people migrated. So Kembe and etc. So there was an exhibit that happened there. And we extended the Tracing Roots concept through heritage walks. And so we did with different collaborations. So the Tracing Roots 2020 was done with the collaboration of Kala Choppa. And the Heritage Walk we developed with students from Ahmedabad University's Center for Heritage of Conservation. And we've had many walks that help people, even the youngsters of Dharmaj, to sort of discover all these old roots and connections. And so it's been really amazing to see how people are reacting to this. And I think a lot of people are very excited about reconnecting and understanding, including the younger age. I think we take it for granted that they don't care, but in reality, they do. I think they are curious about knowing where they've come from, or how did they end up 2 or 3 generations down? Why is it that we live in the UK, but we're known to be from Dharmaj Gam or Badran Gam or Karamsad Gam? Why, that part of our culture and history is embedded to say, tu kaya gamni, chu, I think that is something that's important for them to even understand. And so the only way to make them reconnect is if we hold on to this. And when they're ready and when they come and visit, they also get to see, and connect to what it was like. So, and so through this Tracing Roots initiative, I also published a book with my cousin Vikram Bhai Patel, who did a lot of the legwork and wrote the stories, and we collaborated with the rest of the family and people we knew around us to give us the history in conjunction with items and photographs we found within the house. And this book was published because what we did was describe the journey and what the history was like in the years when our grandparents migrated. And I think it's a very common period for many Dharmajans who went abroad. And so the story is familiar and can resonate to a lot of people who have migrated from Dharmaj. And so all the proceeds from the sale of this book also go towards the foundation. Again, it's not about making money out of this, but really a philanthropic idea of how to repurpose a heritage home that exists within our family. And when we started this process, there were a lot of people within the family who were skeptical about why we're spending so much money. But today, I can say that I think they feel proud, or they are connected to it and can relate to it. I've seen people who had never been to Dharmaj in 20 years come and visit because of this. So I really truly believe that what we're doing with this foundation, and our next speaker is case in point, it is valuable. And so with that, I'd like to hand it over to Meeta Ben, who
Hi, thank you so much, thank you so much, Alpita. You're very inspirational. We as a family of Kalidas Jethabai family, we've only started this journey after attending one of these seminars that was led by CHC and Alpita and Avichal Foundation. So I must thank you guys for reintroducing us to our heritage, and we would like to share a small bit of our journey. So Alpita is going to share it because it's simpler to do it with one person. Okay, so we had to give you a bit of background. I think the last time anybody lived in our house from the family was probably in the 40s. Or that's what we understand. So the family has not lived at that house for a long time. It was rented out, and our grandfathers and grandmothers, when they were alive, they would go back every few weeks. Otherwise, we were not, because they lived in Baroda at the time. To give you a sense of where we are relative to the art walk, next one, please. Next one is the rectangle that you can see that is to the left of the map. We're just on the edge of this art walk. We have, our building is actually falling apart really badly. Some of the pictures you saw. Next one, please. But we started tracing the family lineage because besides the block at the bottom on the right-hand side page of this document created by the Patidar Samaj, we've only managed to know our cousins horizontally, and for a long time we have stayed connected with them, but we have not really had any link back to Dharmaj. And so this was a big tracing exercise for us. Maybe Avni, you want to add a little bit to this? No. Okay, next one, please. So what we've traced back is we've gone all the way back to the person who set up Bachli Khadki and his father. This is what we've found from the document. And we come sort of many generations after this. And we are connected with the three people at the bottom of this tree till today, of the people that are still alive. Next one. Ourselves, Kalidas Jethabai was actually our great-grandfather, and that house is named after him. We believe he's the one who built it. His two sons, Chandulal and Ambalal, migrated to Uganda in the, we think it was in the late 1920s, early 1930. And these are the family members that are of those two brothers. Chandulal did his law degree from the UK before he moved to Uganda, and Ambalal followed him, and he was known as a trader back in Uganda. Their children, the ones with the black boxes, we have lost, and the ones that the rest of the family is still around. Now, the rest of when we started this journey and first started talking to our families in middle of last year, nearly every single person has supported us. It has also brought all of us together, as Alpita has highlighted. And the reason is so emotional. It's all to do with where we come from. We live in all these countries. We live everywhere from Canada to Africa to Australia to Asia, different parts of Asia. But home has always been somewhere in India. And really our root is Dharmaj. And this is why, everybody has supported this exercise in the family. Next one. Okay, so what we found from the house, we've managed to recover some photographs, starting from, Jethabai and his wife on the left. He had 3 sons. We believe these are the 3 sons. And we know that the next photograph with the red arrows, that one of them is Kalidas Jethabai and his brother Kashibai. And he used to be a inspector of school, so he would be followed by this umbrella bearer and this bodyguard, and he would go from village to village. We've heard little stories about how, my grandmother, for example, from Bhadran, she was given a prize by him, and a book which was she held, had till quite late in her life. There's a portrait of a painting of him that we've recovered, and then we have a picture taken in the early 70s of the 2 brothers, just to give you a sense of this, the most recent part of the family. And then next one. This is our house. It is falling down, and as Ashna showed you, it has been propped up by CHC. And then the next one. Another view of the same property. Next one. The inside, and some interesting things that we don't know much about, this sort of wall paintings. Sadly, we have to take that wing down, but we hope we'll be able to bring it down carefully and reuse most of it. But I think the paintings we'll have lost, whatever these little traces of wall paintings that you can see. Next one. The state it was in before it was cleared and propped by Ashna and her team. And then our challenges, we've got, termites, trees growing through it, overgrown, and, we don't have a roof. But at the end of the day, next slide. Why are we doing this? We're doing it because we want to keep our heritage. We also want to help Ashna and Alpita and this, CHC team to put Dharmaj on the map and to share its richness. It's something that, for me personally, it has been remote. Because of COVID, I've not been to Dharmaj for years. I hope I'll be there in the next few months and actively participate in this initiative by Avichal Foundation and the collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mita, for that. Ashna, you want to hand over?
Yes. Thank you, Meeta, and thank you, Alpita, for this sharing all of this. I now invite Ratna Bharti. She is a PhD student of sociology at Ambedkar University, New Delhi, and her doctoral research is based on the dynamics of migrant and non-migrant relationships and the formation of migrant subjectivities among the Gujarati diaspora of Dharmaj. Ratna Bharti has provided us with a recorded presentation, but she's in the meeting as well. So, Firak, may I request you to please share the presentation?
Sure.
Hi everybody, my name is Ratna. I'm a PhD Sociology student at Ambedkar University, Delhi. I'm really glad to be here. I'm very happy to be presenting my work. The title for today's presentation is about transnational migrant subjectivities and belonging, a study of Dharmaj. Let's begin. So the contents of my presentation are introduction, research questions, review of literature, methodology, Patidas and international migration, my fieldwork experience, conclusion, and select bibliography. Let's begin with the introduction. The study discusses the formation and continuation of diasporic subjectivity among Gujarati Patida twice migrants who are now settled in different parts of the world. Most of the Patidas first migrated to Africa and then later on to different countries like the UK, USA, Canada, and so on. The study focuses on migrants' interaction with their home and village of origin Dharmaj through their stay. The development of Gujarati diasporic subjectivity includes an amalgamation of social, cultural, and economic factors. The objective is to highlight that transnational engagement is a two-way process where both the migrants and locals participate as opposed to the standard migrants give and locals take approach. Most migrants stay in Dharmaj from November to April every year. Their stay is facilitated by the locals who also plan various events in honor of the migrants. Owing to their prolonged stay, the nature of transnational engagement is different among the Gujarati Patida twice migrants with Dharmaj. Such transnational presence also affects the existing social order of the village, where migrants are considered to be NRI residents of the village and thereby become a part of locals' everyday life. The study focused on the members of Patida community also analyzes how transnational engagement shapes and is shaped by the dynamics of interaction between the local and the global. The research questions of my study are: 1. To analyze the formation of migrant subjectivity among the Gujarati Patidas settled in different countries through visits conducted in the village of their origin Dharmaj. To analyze various socio-cultural and economic means through which the locals formulate, establish and maintain a bond with the migrants. Now coming to the review of literature, we are going to understand a few concepts that can help us understand the study better. The term diaspora is derived from the Greek word spiros, which means to scatter. It is primarily used to define the populations that have migrated from the land of origin to another place. The term diaspora is essentially used to refer to the groups or community of people. It has been theorized as a stance, a claim, an expression by the social scientist Brubaker. Diaspora has been in definition to its homeland by Safran, their desire to go back to the place of origin. Now, transnationalism has been defined by Schiller and Levitt as a process by which migrants keep links to their homeland. This allows analyzing how the members of diaspora maintain relations with homeland and what is the nature of those relations. However, Appadurai, through his concept of translocalism, establishes that the love the members of diaspora feel is not for the entire nation of their origin, but only for a particular geographic location that they hail from. In this case, it's Dharmaj. Transnational returns are a part of the transnational engagement made by the members of the diaspora. They can be defined as temporary stays at the place of origin in particular. The return visits help us understand the concept of migrant subjectivity, which shapes and is shaped by the transnational engagement by the members of diaspora. Let's quickly look at the methodology. Dharmaj is not just any village, but a transnational village or an NRI village, due to the number of migrants it is home to. Though the site of conducting research is Dharmaj, there are two broad categories of research participant present. One is the international migrants and other are the non-migrants. Through conducting ethnography, the idea was to map out the following: 1. Formation of migrant subjectivity among the Dharmaji and Patidar community of Gujarati diaspora born and settled in different countries, some who were also born in Dharmaj, in a sense to explore what inspires the members of this diaspora to exclusively identify themselves as non-resident Dharmajians and connect with Dharmaj as they do. Also to delineate how and through what means is such a connection established. Second, development of transnational character of the village through migrant-local interaction. Third, to understand how transnationalism is embedded in everyday lives of the local resident people in Dharmaj, socio-culturally, economically and institutionally. The information was mainly collected through open-ended interviews, sometimes as informal conversations, semi-structured and in-depth interviews. Let's understand about Patidars and international migration. The Patidars originally belonged to the Kandi agricultural community containing two subsets, the Lewa and the Karwad. The Kandis of the Charotar region identify Lewa as the descendants of Love, that is son of Lord Rama. While Patidars are known by a common surname Patel, the evolution of Patels into Patidars is complex. Certain members of the Kandi community had attained Patidari rights in the 19th century, that is, possession of cultivable strips of land known as Pati, which could be leased. The Patidar caste emerged as a result of the transition of the Kandi community into holders of a particular system of land tenure under the British, also known as the Patidars. After gaining the land, agricultural grew. But the three events, one is the plague, which happened in 1898 to 1906, the famine which happened in 1906, and the drought which happened between 1900 to 1905, marked the beginning of the losses, of their losses. And the failure of agriculture, the difficulties that they experienced had led them to go for international migration. And most of the Patidars had migrated to Africa because to work on the railways under the British as laborers. And since then, their international journey began. Now, Dharmaj, since it has an active interaction and transnational engagement by the Patidars who've lived abroad and who continue to live abroad, the institutions in Dharmaj are also influenced by that transnational presence. Therefore, there are two institutions that I'd like to talk about in particular. One is the education system. There are two schools, V.M. Patel School and H.M. Patel School. Then there is Dharmaj School. The V.M. Patel School is a Gujarati medium school and H.M. Patel School is an English medium school. Both the schools were established. The H.M. Patel English medium school was established by the donations given by the members of the Patidar community. The V.M. Patel School had come into existence in 1926 before the independence of India and was assisted by the Gaikwad government. Later on, after the formation of Kelwani Seva Mandal in 1943, it was established to specially take care of all educational institutes in Dharmaj. Later on, the H.M. Patel English Medium School was established in 1978 in order to cater to the increasing demands of English in the global market. Many first-generation Patidars were actually the students of V.N. Patel High School, and they felt that not knowing English, not being able to speak English, or not being entirely good at it had hurt their chances of conducting business successfully, and therefore this noble initiative to establish the school of H.M. Patel had come up, and the residents of Dharmaj too willingly gave up their plots of land in order for the school to come up and function as it is functioning today. And even today, the H.M. Patel School is managed by the funds given by the NRI members who are living abroad. There are also important functions like Vadil Vandana, that is honoring the elders, and the birth anniversary of H.M. Patel, along with experiences of several migrants, are often shared with the students to let them know the kind of heritage that they share. Now, coming to the research findings. Firstly, the thing that I understood that the migrant subjectivity that Patidars have had actually begun when they were living in the host countries itself. The returns The transnational returns to Dharmaj came much later. So the study basically explores the migratory experiences of Gujarati Patidars from Dharmaj to Africa, the very first experience of international migration, and later on to different countries such as United Kingdom, USA, and the Canada. This phenomena is essentially called twice migration. And though the reasons for the international migration from Dharmaj to Africa were socio-economic, the process of journey was a deeply personal experience for the Gujarati Patidars. In many instances, my research participants grimly recall the hardships that they had been through in an effort to establish themselves. Firstly, the need to migrate became so rampant among the Patidars in Dharmaj that there were tickets to Mombasa, Africa available almost very easily. Many children of second generation immigrants feel that their parents had indeed worked extremely hard for the family to provide. According to my research participants, some of the parents, both their mom and dad, had worked 2 shifts in London in order to be able to bring themselves to a point where they could afford a 2-bedroom house. Now, when the Gujarati community in Africa had to move to the UK and other countries, predominantly because of the Africanization policies which favored the locals over the South Asians who were living there at that time. So even when the Gujarati community moved to the UK, it was a difficult experience. Several research participants experienced hostile attitudes from the locals and from the host countries. Many twice migrant Gujarati families were once again back to the situation of having lesser money, lesser resources, and they had to start again from the scratch. During that period, 2 different categories of Gujaratis had also come up. One was Gujaratis from Kenya and other were Gujaratis from London who were slightly well off. The Gujaratis from Kenya were known to be struggling on their arrival to the United Kingdom, whereas the Gujaratis who were already settled in London were comparatively well settled. In this case, certain amount of hierarchy was definitely established, and the Kenyan Gujaratis tried really hard to gain footing in that scenario. However, the rise came fast, and they did come up with Dharma Society of London. It was a group of Kenyans who came up with it. It's a philanthropic organization that till today contributes to the hospitals and various other philanthropic institutions that are coming up in Dharmaj. So the thing is, it was not easy for the Gujarati Patidars to have established themselves, and yet they did. Now the second challenge that was coming is that the children have grown up. Now there is a first generation, there is a second generation, and there is also a third generation. While the first generation, like we already know, is incredibly attached to the homeland, the second generation, according to my understanding, is preferring a simultaneous existence. That is, this concept was given by Levitt, and it essentially explains that the diaspora may not want to return permanently, but are looking for ways where they could live in both places and to be able to assert their belonging and their place in both their home and host countries. Now, when the diaspora comes back to Dharmaj, we have to also explore the kind of migrant and the non-migrant relationship that they share. So, what I understood is that the major relationships that the NRI have with the locals is that of having services, and these services enable the locals to become a part of this transnational engagement, and this kind of interaction makes it a social field. Several locals look forward to the visit of NRI so that they are able to not only socialize with them but also sort of gain business and to get or to make their jobs more regularized. Here we are not talking about independent businesses. Here we are talking about smaller people doing smaller work, such as there are tailors, there are domestic helpers, there are people who render tiffin services, beauty parlors, and mehendi artists who have immensely benefited from and who are a part of the transnational sphere that the migrants themselves have constructed. And this is what actually makes Dharmaj have a transnational character. One of my research participants, a tailor by profession, explains the rate that they give and will give will always be different. And it is not because I charge more, but it is because they love my work and they believe that work from Dharmaj is more authentic. Some of the most sought after outfits are chaniya choli for women and sherwani for men. Now, similarly, when it comes to tiffin business, the tiffin business is sought after by mostly the NRIs of the first generation who prefer home cooked food and believe that Dharmaj can cater and the people who are serving tiffin, who have set up a tiffin business, can cater to their needs. This helped the people to establish tiffin services as a form of business also. So one of my research participants shares her experiences and she says, I started this business because cooking is all I know. My husband got bedridden suddenly and I did not even have money for his treatment. So I decided to do something. One day I told everyone that I'm beginning a tiffin service. An old couple ordered breakfast. I made it. That was it. There was no looking back. Today I give around 100 tiffin boxes. There are two kinds of tiffin boxes. Half tiffin box for 60 rupees and 120 rupees for a full tiffin box. As her business grew, there are also locals of Dharmaj who solicit these kind of services. But one of the interesting things we can notice from this is that the NRIs are interacting with the locals, although in the form of service, but they are still what we call making this relationship dynamic. In one case, I have noticed that owing to the wants and in order to cater to the desires of the NRI diaspora, some of the services have recently been opened, also known as Saubhagya, which was launched by two ladies. This caters only to the wedding items that are required in a Gujarati wedding. Many diaspora members are extremely keen on Oh, I'm sorry, there was a technical issue. Yeah, many diaspora members are again extremely keen on having an authentic wedding, authentic patidar wedding, and they want things that are rich with cultural heritage, and that comes from Dharmaj. And though Dharmaj already has heritage, but to actually have business come out of it is happening through the patidars. Now, one of the most important events that happens in Dharmaj, and I hadn't talked about it till now, is Dharmaj Day. So Dharmaj Day is one of the main star attractions of Dharmaj, which entirely showcases its transnational character. And this Dharmaj Day helps all the generations that I've worked on so far, the first, the second, and even the third generation. The third generation of diaspora, though, is identifying more with their host societies that they were born in, but Dharmaj Day is catching their attention. It is doing the job of bringing back people to their lands in a very beautiful way. So, one technicality of Dharmaj Day is that there are awards given to the members of diaspora who contribute, who bring about a positive change in their home or host countries. So the point of the awards is to firstly encourage their participation and secondly to honor their identity. That even the fact that they are contributing to their host societies is also a matter of pride to their home, to their village, and to the place that they actually belong to. This kind of acceptance helps the diaspora understand that they can indeed belong to two places at once. So naturally, My work is still evolving, and these are the few things that I wanted to share. So we come to the conclusions part, and that is the formation of migrant subjectivity among the Gujarati Patidar diaspora happens through the narratives about village and through the translocal space-making activities. There are differences among the first, second, and third generation of diaspora members. Evidently, the first generation of diaspora members are clearly more involved with Dharmaj, its activities. The second generation of diaspora is also catching up. In this case, we'd like to talk about the Rhodesia House and how this has been renovated by Mrs. Alpita Patel, who's a second generation immigrant from Africa. And that kind of speaks that Dharmaj, the people who are belonging to Dharmaj are able to identify and are able to reassert their place back in Dharmaj. We can see that the concept of home is also changing, which means it is not important for the diaspora to come back and settle here, but it is important for the diaspora to keep that connection alive. And this connection is kept alive by the visits that the diaspora makes to Dharmaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ratna. Thank you for sharing your extensive study and the research findings. I think it was very useful. We now have Dr. Alice Tilche with us. She's an anthropologist and expert in museum studies in the University of Leicester. And she has an extensive experience in research and fieldwork in the Western India, the region of Western India. And she also has her expertise in co-creating research with communities through collaborative visual and arts-based methodologies. So welcome, Alice. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm going to share the screen. I'm just checking the settings. I wanted to optimize it for video, and I can't do that. So I do hope that I'll be able to also play a video clip, but let's see. Yeah, let's see how it works. Can you see that? Yeah? Yeah. Great. So, okay, so I'm gonna move. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. This is a great project, and I'm really happy, to see this developing. I started talking about this quite a while ago, and it has developed so much through the Avichal Heritage Foundation. So it's really great. I'm going to shift the focus a bit, slightly, as we do in my profession, to out of Dharmaj. As anthropologists, we often study things, but by looking at the things that we don't see. And so we're going to shift the focus slightly to Sundarana, which is a village located a couple of kilometers away from Dharmaj, the other side of the highway. And this is a village where I worked in now almost 10 years ago, in 2012-13. I spent actually almost a year working in this village while living in Dharmaj at the Jalaram temple. And I was conducting a sort of restudy of this area. It was part of a larger project where we were looking at villages in India that had been studied by anthropologists in the 50s in order to trace the kind of the transition of change. We were looking at agrarian transitions and how these places had changed over a 50-year period. And the anthropologist I was restudying, his name is David Pocock. He had worked in this village in the 50s, and he wrote one book that is called Kambi and Patidar, where basically he traced the shift from Kambi or agricultural laborers to Patidars as kind of landowners. And so he looked at the kind of trajectory of upward mobility, and especially looked at marriage as a key to this process of mobility. And he looked at the particular system of marriage within the Patidar community and the system of goals or samaj, the way in which people marry within particular village circles or networks. Now, since the 50s, we could then trace another transition in a way from agriculturalists to international migrants, and see how land, as a cultural and economic value was really substituted by the value of transnational migration. Now, a lot of the studies of the Patidars have looked at this shift, from agriculturists to international migrants, and they have traced the sort of success story of places like Dharmaj as a transnational village that has become a very prosperous place in many ways, as well with a wide diaspora across the world. And I guess the study that I did looks at migration from a different perspective. It looks at migration not from the perspective of those who have left and who have perhaps successfully built lives and networks elsewhere, but looks at migration from the perspective of those who have stayed, and also those who have tried to migrate and didn't manage and therefore stayed back in the village. I'm gonna play it. So as part of this research project, I worked on a film on the project. So I'll play you a video clip, which I hope you will be able to see. That will give you a sense of some of the research I did. Let's see.
જમેલા હવે કઢી ખાજલી ખીચડી ખા અમારા ભાઈ જોડે આવે એ બેઠેલા હવે મારી જોડે ઘોણી ઉપર दो ही रेडियो था गांव में, वो बैटरी पर चलाता था। धीरे धीरे गाँवમાંથી ઘણા બહાર ગયા છોકરાઓ અત્યારે જાય છે આ ગામની પ્રગતિ થઈ ગઈ છે। અત્યારે અમારું સુંદરપુર જેવું રોનકમાં આવી ગયું। ધીરે ધીરે પ્રગતિ થઈ ને બહાર ગયા એટલે બહારથી વિદેશી પૈસા કમાયેલા આવે ને તો પછી ગામમાં રોનક આવે ને। અમારે ઇન્ડિયામાં એક પગાર આવે 1000 રૂપિયા તો પગાર 10,000।
The 50% of girls that are there, they are thinking that they should get married the boys who is NRI.
છોકરીઓ ભણાવે છે
એમનો સંત કરીએ
તો એના કારણે શું પ્રોબ્લેમ થઈ ગયો છે?
છોકરા કુમારા રહે છે 100 છોકરા એમ 20-30 છોકરીઓ છે।
કોને લંડન જવાનું?
ફોરેન થી આવ્યો છે એ ભાઈ સેટ થયેલો છે પર એવો તેનો રાઈટ છે તો એની જોડે મેરેજ કરવાનો, એની જોડે ઢગલો બાયોડેટા આવ્યો।
અમારે પટેલ, વાણિયા, બ્રાહ્મણ ત્રણ જ્ઞાતિ છે કે ભાઈ ઉચ્ચ જ્ઞાતિ તરીકે ત્રણ જ્ઞાતિ મનાય કે પટેલ, વાણિયા અને બ્રાહ્મણ। તો એક જ્ઞાતિની છોકરી તમને તમારી એજ પ્રમાણે ના મળી શકે તો તમારે બીજી છોકરીને બીજી જ્ઞાતિમાંથી લાવવી જરૂરી થઈ જાય। અત્યારે 35% કેસ એવા છે। પટેલમાં બ્રાહ્મણ છે, પટેલની અંદર ઠાકોર છે, પટેલમાં સોલંકી, આઉટ સમાજ, આઉટ લોકેશન, આઉટ પીપલ, આઉટ કલ્ચર, આઉટ everything out, religion also out.
કીર્તિમ જે લખ્યું એટલું વારીને મૂકો તો નિકાલો થાય, લગન વહેલું થાય। 1 મહિનાની અંદર લગન થઈ જાય, પ્રેત આત્મા બેસી જાય। જેને વિઝા મળ્યા હોય આ ઝેરોક્સ છે, અમેરિકા, લંડન।
At the end, we have only one chance to get married. We should go into another caste, inter-caste marriage.
Oh, sorry. In the film and the research, we look at migration, at the shift from agriculture to migration, and at migration as a kind of economic and cultural imperative. So it is now well documented in India that that agriculture is in many areas no longer the mainstay of the agrarian economy. So the agricultural sector continues to experience a negative growth, including a decline in land holdings and in the proportion of workers who list agriculture as their main occupation. We see also the growth of rural non-farm employment. However, the decline of agriculture has also not been even, with some areas acting as reservoirs of laborers and others attracting labor instead. And so, Sundarana, like Dharmaj, is located in a very fertile area that, from the perspective of other agricultural regions, would be seen as very prosperous. In Sundarana, the Patidar community constitutes only the 20% of the village, but they own around 80% of the land. But as we saw in the previous presentation, the crisis of agriculture is not only an economic one, but is also a crisis, a cultural crisis, a crisis that is related to different kinds of aspiration. So, even people who own land, in a way, are considered poor, to the extent that a farmer is not a desirable marriage candidate, as we saw in the kind of excerpt. These are some of the fields in the village. This is actually from Dharmaj. This is chili production. These are photos of families who had, people migrating abroad. So in the film, what I did is that I followed, over the period of a year, a young educated farmer who had gained an MA in commerce, and after gaining his MA, he followed his family and community aspiration to try and migrate, and he was unsuccessful in the sense that his visa was refused, and so he decided then to stay back in the village and work on his family's land as a sort of supervisory farmer. And when I met him, he was looking for a marriage partner. He was 27 years of age. It was an age where he was considered already kind of old within the marriage market. And so I went with him to all these marriage meetings, and the recurrent the recurrent problem was that girls, and especially the family of girls, did not want to marry this person because of the lack of migratory credentials that he could provide, because he had no aspirations to move abroad, right? So in a way, we look at how migration has become the key to belonging locally. It's become key to economic and social reproduction, to acquiring material wealth, but also to acquiring status and the credentials to marry. These are some of the older houses of Sundarana village, since we were talking about architectural heritage, and these are some of the newer ones.
It's not that all the people are thinking that we should study for doing the job. Here is the main mentality of even though my parents also were thinking like that, my family in the village also. But from my opinion, it is not there. We should study only for our knowledge. In our Samaj, there was the first rule that the boys or girls should be married in the Samaj, not out of that. But nowadays, due to the shortage of the girl, in our generation, there is the very shortage. We can't get, and the first problem is that the shortage, girls are less. And some amount, the 50% of girls that are there, they are thinking that they should get married the boys who is NRI, who is from the abroad. So that is the second problem for us. I am doing the farming here, the family of the girl will think that this boy is doing the farming. So we don't give the girl. Our girl will not happy in the house of Pinaki because he is doing the farming. They are saying that they are.
I'll play another clip.
કોને લંડન જવાનું?
બધાના મા-બાપ પોતાની છોકરીને એબ્રોડ મોકલવા માંગે છે.
એનું કારણ
મોકલવા માંગે એનું મેઇન કારણ મની પાવર.
મની પાવર.
પણ તઈ શું છે જે તઈ રહેતા હોય એમને ખબર છે કે તઈની લાઈફ શું છે.
છોકરીઓ બહાર જવાને એવું પૂછે તાર છોકરીઓને યાદ કરે કે છોકરીઓ આવું પૂછે.
એ શું કારણ?
છોકરીઓ છે નહીં વધારે છોકરાઓ વધી ગયા છે.
3 વર્ષ યુકેની લાઈફ જીવીને અહીંયા ગામમાં આવ્યા પછી what was your first reaction?
રિલેક્સ હિયર અહીંયા આવ્યા પછી બહુ જ રિલેક્સ અનુભવ્યું મેં.
And your second reaction?
Boring. After 1 month, I'm very bored here.
Why?
Because
No
nothing, no work.
You applied any job?
No, not now.
તો અત્યારે શું કરો છો?
કંઈ નહીં. ટાઈમ પાસ.
ગામમાં અમારે ખેતીનું જ કામ હોય. ગામમાં તો ખેતીવાળા ગાયો ભેંસો રાખે એટલે એ તો કરવું જ પડે. ખેતી હોય એટલે ગાયો ભેંસો હોય જ અને ગાયો ભેંસો હોય એટલે એનું કામ કરવું જ પડે. અને તારે એ કામે કરવા પહેલાં તો મળી રહેતા હતા માણસો, હવે તો નહીં મળતા. એમ મોંઘવારી પ્રમાણે એ લોકો મોંઘા થયા છે.
એજ્યુકેશન વધતું ગયું જોડે જોડે એટલે પછી અભણ છોકરીઓ હોય તો અમુક એજ્યુકેશન વાળો ના લઈ શકે ને કે ભાઈ ભણેલી જ લોકો આપણે. અને અમુક જણા જે છોકરીઓ નથી ભણી એમને અત્યારે પેલું ટીવીની ચેનલ બધી જોઈને એમને થોડુંક જનરલ નોલેજ આવી ગયું કે આપણે ભેંસોનું કામ નથી કરવું કે ભાઈ ફોરેનમાં જવું છે કંઈ. એટલે એ પાછું ઊંચા વિચારો લઈને એ બી ચાલે. ગામડાનો છે ખેતી કરશે ચલો નથી ભણવું. ફોરેનથી આવ્યો છે એ ભાઈ સેટ થયેલો છે પર એવો તેનો રાઈટ છે તો એની જોડે મેરેજ કરવાનો, એની જોડે ઢગલો બાયોડેટા આવ્યા છે. અને જે અહીં ખેતી કરશો હોય છે એની જોડે બાયોડેટા એક બી નહીં હોય. જ્યારે
So there was this narrative from girls and from boys, in a way the boys were complaining that, well, there is a lack of girls in the village, partly due to historical, patterns that have also continued through, practices of sex-selective abortions, but also, and especially because girls did not want to marry farmers. They had other kinds of aspirations, and so the families that could marry them up the social ladder would marry them to migrants. And this is the photo of an NRI who in a minute came back to the village and got so many engagement requests and got married within a couple of months. On the other hand, girls were complaining that, well, there are not enough marriageable boys in the village because we don't want to marry farmers. The boys that are there are not educated enough, or they're not up to our standards. Young women in Sundarana were undergoing a dramatic transformation. They were often the first in their family to have gained in education and often outperformed men. and so they really were the first that also aspired to leave behind peasant life. So then, the film also looks at, at the issue of discontent and living, according to standards that you're not able to, you're not able to attain. And as we saw, there was this, this thing of time pass. What are you going to do? In a way, the fact that migration had become the culture of the caste, but many failed to achieve it. So, in the film, many of these young boys spent a lot of time doing so-called time pass, roaming around on their scooters, speaking on mobile phones, and sitting around. and they had also developed a kind of narrative of victimization, and they kind of explained their failure partly in relation to the sort of against the successful migrants. So there was a friction between the unsuccessful migrants and the successful migrants. And that they also complained about the rising power of the lower castes and the kind of growing access to the reservation system. And these narratives, in a way, reinforced this ideal of migration as a necessity and as the kind of only way out and the only mode of survival for the group. And so many spent actually their time trying to plan for their next departure. And this, this meant mobilizing networks of kinship, but also also becoming involved in religious activities. There was religious gurus, as you saw in the film, who everybody visited in order to gain, in order to improve their chances of migrating abroad. So I guess going back to the project that you're discussing here, I think this is it's a great project that is taking place locally, and hearing the presentation, it really makes me think that this is, it's an important project, yes, for the diaspora and for people to reconnect, with their roots, but it will also be a really important project in order to valorize the places, the villages locally, and to perhaps change some of these narratives and some of these frictions that do exist, or at least they existed when I worked in this area 10 years ago. And so I think it will be a fantastic project. It will be also a difficult one in terms of bringing together a community that, as all communities are, is very united, but also fragmented. And so I think the practice of collaboration and getting people involved locally will be really essential to the to the sustainability of a project like this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out to share all this with us. I think this adds a very different perspective to what we've been talking about so far. I would now like to invite the students who are currently working on directed research programs with the site in Dharmaj. If any of you have any questions, anything that we would like to discuss, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
I had a question for Alpita, actually. So Rhodesia House was built around 1930s, early 1930s, using a timber sort of a construction. So before I ask the question, I'm Pranjali. I'm from CEPT University. I'm a second year student of Masters in Architectural History and Theory at the university. And I am involved in researching about Art Deco buildings in Dharmaj. So I'm kind of tracing the history of how Art Deco building came in Dharmaj. And hence I am kind of trying to triangulate how previous styles also kind of emerged in Dharmaj. So my question to you, Alpita, is that Rhodesia House was built as a timber and brick building. No. Was it an RCC building?
So in those days they used, I guess, not RCC, but lime plaster, the equivalent of the earlier RCC, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So what I want to ask is, it is built in a very neoclassical style, or Indo-Saracenic style. Can you elaborate on where these influences came from? Because I have talked to certain people, certain residents in Dharmaj, and a lot of the later structures, Art Deco structures, had come up using, they were being built by very local contractors over there who had not visited metro cities from where certain influences came from. But is that a similar trajectory for even neoclassical architecture as such? Do you have any idea of how the craftsmanship of these aesthetics of Rhodesia House came to be?
So unfortunately, I don't have the reason why they decided to go with this kind of architecture, but my guess would be, just from knowing the family and my Dadaji's and a lot of his, I guess, colleagues at the time or associates who went with him in Dharmaj who have similar architecture, they were really connected or believed in maintaining culture and keeping that connection to the Indian culture. So they were also founders in the host country, in this case Zimbabwe, where they were responsible for creating the first community hall, the first mandir, they ensured that they would travel back to India so that the kids would go to VN High School, which is Gujarati medium school, and learn the language and understand the culture. So I think, but then they also benefited and enjoyed the British system or the culture and the style, because where they grew up in Rhodesia, where they changed or developed their businesses in Rhodesia, then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, it was very highly British influenced, right? And so the style of living, the kind of buildings they saw over there, I think had a big part of the way it was constructed. But they found the medium, the middle, in sort of creating the way they, in the Indo-Sasanic style, where they sort of married the two to maintain that connect. And that's just my belief from what I've seen.
Yes, yeah, that was like you answered my question. Also what I want to add to ask ahead is that do you know where this expertise of building came from in terms of laborers or contractors who were involved in building a house like this? Because I think the Aurobindo Bhavan was very contemporary to the Rhodesia House. It was just some years here and there, I think.
Correct. So I'm not aware, I haven't really done the research yet. It's something I do want to learn and try and find out about who was really involved. What I do know is that my grandfather's older brother, Fakir Bhai, who lived there in Dharmaj, oversaw the construction. So clearly there were local contractors and builders or who were part of the making of these buildings. So it was all locally done, but I understand that the plans and that were probably influenced by people they knew, other architects they knew from other friends, because that's just the way of doing business in the Gujarati community, right? Like tamaru saru dekhai chhe, chalo tamaru kaam saru thayo to mane apo enu naam, and evi ritna that's kind of how they shared resources and knowledge and used what worked for them and their designs. So I assume at that time, seeing that there was so much construction going on, because there were other people who were like him, who were bringing money back into their villages, whether it was Badran or Sojitra or Dharmaj or wherever else. I think you'll see a similar pattern in the other villages too, of the same sort of architecture, differential, in that, they definitely shared those resources. And I think that a lot of the architecture is not from one place. They were very well connected because a lot of them had import-export businesses. And so because of the networks they created, they were able to source materials from different places, right? Like the mirrors come from Belgium, the tiles came from Japan, the woodwork came from Africa. Some of the systems and engineering they saw it in whichever country they were in, whether it was the UK or Africa. And so they, like Rhodesia House was one of the first houses to have tap water or electricity generator. So they adopted technologies from where they were and tried to bring it in if they could afford it. And so, a lot of what you see is built on those networks and influence.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Sachin. I'm a student of Masters in Conservation at CEP, and I am doing research on the cultural heritage tourism as a potential tool for regeneration in Dharmaj. So my question is directed to Alpita ji and partly to Meeta ji. You mentioned leading by example when you have restored Rhodesia House. So in the short time that I've spent there, on the couple of occasions I visited and now for my research, I've realized that the strength of the of Dharmaj, or rather the Chagam, is in the collective, the unity in the numbers. So do you think that now that you kind of set a benchmark by doing what you've done at Rhodesia House, and having been there, it's quite an example, and the work that is going to be done at Kalidas, the Jetabai House, and the Mukhi House. Do you think it would need more than just individual enterprise, or do you think it could be a collective kind of an effort? I mean, now that things are heading towards the old normal, do you think we can look at that happening on the collective scale, not the individual initiatives that are being taken right now?
So I'll go ahead because I'm not sure if Meeta Bin's there right now.
I'm here, but yes, we've discussed this, so you go ahead.
You sure you want to go ahead?
No, you do it.
Okay. So, we have discussed this, and I think the aim is to make it a collective effort, because the idea is we want this to be sustainable. And as even Alice had mentioned, right, how do you make this sustainable? Having cultural tourism is one way of creating jobs. If we create a standard, and with the collective efforts of those that are abroad, and maybe reskilling or training people who are local, giving them an opportunity to find a job or aspirate to something different besides farming as an alternative, is what the cultural tourism will do in this region, right? So the only way to do this is collectively. I don't think it can be done individually. These initiatives begin individually, yes, but only if we collaborate are we going to be able to make this sustainable. I mean, that's the vision we see. That's how we want to implement it. Clearly, there's challenges. There's always fragmentation within communities. On one hand, yes, we all believe in a Dharmaj or our Dharmaj, but the question is, how do we envision our Dharmaj? And not everybody has the same vision, right? Or not everybody is willing to participate at the same level. So it'll take time, I believe, but I really, really, truly believe it's possible once we start seeing the strength in numbers.
We have a model that we think we could use as a template, and which is the Alberge Diffuso, which is these Italian hill towns that use many homes to create an experience, as part of, and it's not sort of, we don't remove it from the agricultural aspects of Dharmaj, because I think that's some of its character, and how we don't lose some of the character that already exists, I think is going to be a massive challenge as well.
Yes. I think it's important to be sensitive about that, right?
Yes.
The bread and butter is for the people that are local, their farms and what it is. We're not trying to take that away, but there is a level of opportunity that doesn't exist within, right? Or or this gives them an extra opportunity to earn a little bit more money.
Yes.
And just expose themselves to something different, a different experience.
It's also seasonal, because that is another challenge that we'll have to address as we develop an idea.
Correct. So I hope that answers your question, Sachin.
Thank you. And if I may, part 2 of that was when I mentioned the collective. If you remember the discussion, the short discussion that we had, there is so much of expertise within the community, whether they live here in India or abroad. And a lot of them, if they could be tapped to, kind of be a part of this collective. Are you also looking at that aspect? Because I'm sure there'll be so many people who are already doing so much into these initiatives that are being there, be it tourism or anything else to do with economic regeneration. They must have done it out there itself. Would you be looking at, because there was also the mention about the awards being given that I think Ratnaji mentioned at Dharmaj Day for people who've done so much work in the places that they live in. Do you think that would also be a thing that could be looked into?
Absolutely. I mean, we're always welcoming people who have these expertise, right? To see. It's about whether they have the time or the interest to participate. But yes, I mean, that's part of the collective that we're talking about, or structure we want to sort of set up to allow that to happen. And yes, anybody out there listening and who is interested in sort of engaging with this, more than welcome to please reach out to us. To info@avijal.org, or any one of us, if you know personally through connections, to sort of come on board to develop this.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to ask something, say something?
Hi, I'm Priyanka. Mine is not a question, just an observation following Alice's presentation. Like what we also had some stakeholder consultation last semester when we were in Dharmaj, and connecting to what you presented, how there are some necessities for transnational migration. In Dharmaj, there are a lot of abandoned houses, and we found out that the reason was that for people to get married, they should have had a property in the village to as showcasing as their merit. So even though they don't live there, but they need to have a property, and like it also added on this heritage assets of Dharmaj. So yeah, I kind of felt that it was connecting to what you said, like people prefer people grooms that are NRI based or have migrated. It was something similar to that.
Thank you. I guess that's the other side of the story. Are you saying that marriages abroad do want somebody who has a heritage location in Dharmaj? Yeah. So I think that's that's why this project is so has so much potential, and I really look forward to seeing it develop, because I think the narratives around migration, of course, do not stay the same. They also change, and they will change. So I think if a project like this can take foot, I'm sure transformation is possible in a different direction too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting observation, actually, to hear that. I didn't expect it, but I'm surprised. I'm glad to hear it in a sense. And to Alice's point, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing what you did, or the perspective that you did. We a lot of times when people from me who come from outside, look at it in one direction. What your presentation showed is the other side. And what I also see or have experienced locally is there's those that have gone abroad and come back, and the idea that yes, it's so relaxed here, and then they do this time pass thing, and that drive to learn or do more or be creative. So it's not that I think that in the villages they don't have that exposure the cities do, right? Cities typically people are competing with each other for certain resources, and so they push themselves, they create, they find ways to make things happen. In the village, because there is none of that, you find that they find just sitting and doing nothing, and but it seeps into the generations to sort of then become pretty laid back. And so if they don't see change happening, sometimes it's also because they're not making the change, right? And by this transnational or these kind of projects, we hope that we can engage and show them that if you just, even within the system, if you applied yourself to different things, you will see change happen in a positive direction.
I have a quick question, like a curiosity, actually. If thinking about the changes in migration and the value of more rural places. I'm from Italy, and and I see, with the COVID pandemic, there has been a lot of reverse kind of migration back to Italy. I mean, not necessarily to small towns, but definitely, to some urban areas, and in some cases to villages too. I mean, I don't know how long it will last, but I was wondering if you see any change with the pandemic and after in your project and in the prospects it opens.
So I think that in general, there's a generation that's already looking to sort of have some property of some sort in India, and they come, for 2 or 3 months of the year, especially in the winter months of the host country. They'll tend to come to India because it's just more climatically comfortable, and sort of stay in India for those times. And so there's some of that reconnection happening, whether they come to the village or not. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing a lot of the houses coming down, being demolished and recreated, is for this reason. There are owners that are doing that. They just rebuilding to create a comfortable apartment or home that they can come to for a few months of the year. So, like Ashna said, Omita said, that it's a very seasonal thing that's happening. We are seeing that happen as well. I don't know if Jigna or Ashna, you want to sort of add to that?
No, I think for me, this has been a very, very fascinating discussion, because many times, I mean, there have been, when we've been discussing with students last semester as well, there have been a lot of discussions about what is a social place, what is the social role of owning a property in Dharmaj hold for the diaspora. That, the discussion about that, does the diaspora think about it as something valuable? Do they think about it as a matter of pride that they have a house back home? And on the other side, what is the thought about these sites as heritage for the people who are living in Dharma just now, or the people who are left behind? And one would imagine that the people, and this was a matter of our conjecture, that people who are not living here may want to keep things the way it is, because there's a element of nostalgia possibly, and there's also an element of pride in keeping your ancestral house the way it is, whereas the people who are living here may want to change it more rapidly than it is happening just now. So it's also a matter of tension between how these two communities as such belonging maybe to the same same cultural background, but very different social realities may interact with the built environment very differently. And what I found very, very fascinating was that the deep studies that Alice and Ratna have done, and the way you've presented your own histories and your own pasts, that have sort of brought back a lot of those discussions. And I genuinely hope that the students who are attending today would be able to go beyond conjecture and place their arguments in many of these discussions that are happening here, and many of the discussions that they've taken, they've had there, and place the built environment in that context. So
I think if I add to that, that a lot of families like ours, it's not that we, I mean, it is a matter of pride, but from a distance to do a property, and then does it stay empty? It needs a program, yeah, for it to survive. And I think that software is what Alpita has, and you guys have generated, which helps people like our families to see the value of going back and taking care of it to some extent. And therefore the collective application, we don't cannibalize each other, those are the things we'll have to manage well, to make it work.
So I just have to thank all of you. I think I have to thank all of you to give us the space collectively to have these discussions. Yeah, Alpita, you were saying something, sorry.
No, I'm saying that what Meeta brought up is actually the true challenge, right, of making this work, and sort of, like Jigna said, like part of the thing is how to make it sustainable in the long run. Once we gone, what happens to it? Once the people are currently working on it. So I think if systems are set up in such a way, and I think with, like Sachin was saying, we can tap into people who have done this kind of work before. For example, the hotel moteliers of the US, maybe they can help us, figure out a better system to make it efficient. And just tapping into the wealth of, I guess, different backgrounds and skills, and creating this transnational skill development program in the future. Who knows? There's just so many possibilities, I think. And yeah, it's pretty exciting. I just want to say thank you to everybody who has come on board. Alice from the UK, Ratna from Delhi, Ashna for holding the fort and really creating, the local presence, and putting this all together, bringing everybody on board. Jigna, your support has been unbelievable. And of course, the Kelavni Mandar, Sanjay Bhai, Hasmukh Bhai from the library, and all those that have attended within Dharmaj. I know there aren't too many who have, but those that did, clearly support and are watching what's going on. And so thank you everybody for coming today. I just want to say personal thank you from me. Back to you, Ashna.
Thank you. If nobody else has anything to say, we can call it a day, and we look forward to more such discussions over time. So thank you all for joining.
Ashna, if I may just add, I think the follow-up thing about this should be that all the students who are present here, they should, by the end of this semester, do an exhibition in Dharmaj about their work. They should explain whatever they've studied. They should explain it to we should put it out there, not as a Zoom meeting, but out there as research and drawings. And I think let's plan that towards once you all are ready. So let's do that. Yeah.
When does your semester end? Maybe I'll come for that.
It's summer. It's in May.
In May. Okay.
So yeah. So let's hope to do that sometime. Yeah. Everybody, all the students are smiling just now, so I'm hoping
that'll be wonderful. Make sure we have air conditioning in Rhodesia House by then.
Okay. Thank you, Ashna. Thank you, Satvika, who's there somewhere in the background. Okay.
No, it'll be wonderful to see everybody again for sure. So we'll see you then.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.